You know that feeling, right? Your heart's pounding before a big presentation, or you get that knot in your stomach when you're worried about something? That's anxiety. But what happens when that feeling just doesn't go away? That's what we're going to get into, the real difference between everyday stress and what it means to have an anxiety disorder.
This is really the central question, isn't it? I mean, worrying about a job interview, totally normal. But what if you're worrying like that about, well, everything, all the time? Let's dive in and see exactly where that line gets drawn between a totally natural human emotion and a clinical condition.
So think about it like this. Normal worry, it has a clear cause and, an end point. You worry about a test, you take the test, and then, phew, the worry starts to fade. An anxiety disorder, though, is a whole different beast. It's kind of like this storm cloud that just follows you around, raining down worry, even when the skies should be perfectly clear. The feeling is constant, and the reaction is often way out of proportion to what's actually happening.
Okay, to really get this, we need to pop the hood and see what's going on. What is actually happening in our brains and bodies when that feeling of anxiety takes over? Let's start with the absolute basics. At its core, anxiety is just our body's ancient alarm system. I mean, it's designed to protect us from threats, whether that's a tiger in the grass thousands of years ago or the modern threat of public speaking. The problem isn't the alarm itself. It's when that alarm starts going off for no good reason. And here's how fast it all happens. In a split second, your brain spots something it thinks is dangerous. Boom. It hits the big red button, triggering that fight, flight, or freeze response. Your heart starts pounding, your breathing gets quick and shallow, and your body is flooding your muscles with blood and oxygen. It's getting you ready to either take on the danger or run for your life. It's an absolutely incredible survival tool. But what happens when that amazing survival mechanism gets stuck in the on position? Well, for millions of people, it becomes a chronic condition. Just look at this number, 40 million. That's how many adults in the US are living with an anxiety disorder right this second. It's the most common mental illness in the country. So if any of this sounds familiar to you, you are not alone, not by a long shot. But this is the statistic that's truly staggering. Even though it's so incredibly common, less than 37% of people who have an anxiety disorder actually get treatment. Think about that. That means nearly 2/3 of people are just toughing it out, struggling in silence. And that is why talking about this and understanding it is so important. Now, it's really important to know that anxiety isn't just one single thing. It's not a monolith. It shows up in a lot of different ways for different people. So let's look at a few of its most common faces. First up, there's generalized anxiety disorder, or GAD. You can think of this as a constant low-level hum of worry that's just always there in the background. It's not tied to one specific thing. It can latch onto your finances, your health, your job, anything really, which makes it feel almost impossible to ever truly relax. Then there's panic disorder. This one is all about panic attacks, these sudden, absolutely terrifying waves of fear that can honestly make you feel like you're having a heart attack. Your chest gets tight, you can't catch your breath, you feel dizzy. It's this incredibly intense physical experience. And then, the fear of having another attack creates its own vicious cycle of anxiety. And finally, let's talk about social anxiety disorder. This is so much more than just being shy. It's a powerful, persistent fear of being watched and judged by other people. Every single social interaction can feel like you're under a microscope, which leads people to avoid parties, meetings, even simple phone calls, just to get away from that awful feeling of scrutiny. So, where does all this come from? Why do some people develop an anxiety disorder when others don't? Well, the answer is never just one thing. It's more like a complex cocktail of different factors, both inside us and around us. On one hand, you've got psychological factors, the things we go through in life. This could be long-term stress from a tough job, the after effects of a traumatic event, or even behaviors we learned growing up. But then, on the other hand, you have physical factors, our biology, things like our genetics, the unique wiring of our brain, and even other health conditions. For most people, it's how these two things interact that really sets the stage. Okay, so we've defined the problem. We've looked at where it comes from. Now, for the most important part, the solution. And here's the number one thing to take away from all this. Anxiety disorders are highly treatable. There is absolutely a path forward. Now, treatment is rarely a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. It's much more like a toolkit, with 3 main tools that usually work best when they're used together. First, you've got self-care. These are foundational habits like exercise or mindfulness that help calm your nervous system. Then there's psychotherapy, talk therapy. A really common and effective type is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, which is all about learning to spot and challenge those anxious thought patterns. And finally, for some people, medication can be an essential tool to help get the brain chemistry back in balance, which can make all the other work in therapy that much more effective.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground. So let's just take a second and boil it all down to the absolute key things you need to walk away with. So here's the bottom line. First, normal worry is temporary and tied to something specific. An anxiety disorder is persistent, overwhelming, and disrupts your life. Second, it's incredibly common, yet so many people aren't getting help, which is why we need to talk about it. Third, remember, its roots are a complex mix of your life experiences and your biology. And finally, and this is the most important one, it is treatable. Help us out there, and it really, really works.
So, I'll just leave you with this thought. Knowing all this is the first step toward compassion, right? For ourselves and for the people around us. So, what's one small thing you can do with what you've learned today? Maybe it's checking in on a friend, or maybe it's just being a little bit kinder to yourself. That first small step, that's the one that really matters.